Morning everybody, welcome to Leon's Chainsaw Parts and Repair. Today we're going to look at the starter mechanism on a Homelite EZ, super easy in this case, but they're all basically the same. I get a lot of questions about how to service these, and they're not super difficult, but if you haven't done one before, they're not exactly like a typical chainsaw starter. So your recoil spring's held in this cover, and to access much of anything you've either got to take this cover off or you've got to take the entire starter housing away. I don't want to do that because I don't need to at this point, and typically you won't either. So one important thing to remember right off the get-go is when you go and take these two screws loose, if your rope is still intact and your spring's not broken, this is going to be under some pressure. See how that twists just a little bit? That's how you tension the rope, is by twisting this clockwise. You want to relieve that tension. And here's a common problem. I hadn't hoped to deal with this morning, but this cover, make sure I've got this in the camera. You've got your wear plate here. That's just kind of a nylon shield. And you've got this snap ring that's supposed to be down here holding that recoil spring into place. Well, this was assembled incorrectly by the last person that had the saw. This should be underneath that retainer ring. So I'm going to have more work to do on this, but I'm going to continue with the starter rope replacement. Now you can see your spring has this little recoil lock. Make sure that focuses. So that guy sits against the tang on the spring, and then that square end goes into that square end on the pulley. That's how this whole thing works. If you don't get that together properly, not going to be of any use to you. So if your rope is still intact, like this one is, and you just want to replace it, which I'm going to because this has got years of grease and garbage in it, you want to pop your insert out of the starter grip here, and you can just cut this off. And I like to cut as close to the old knot as possible because, assuming that it was done right previously, you can use your old rope to get a good visual on the length you need for your new rope. So you can just set the grip aside, wind this rope out of the eyelet there, and then carefully pry this pulley out. This is probably the most difficult part of the whole operation, is just getting it to release from the starter pawls. Sometimes you can use a pair of pliers. There we go. Okay, now this is a 74 model, yeah, 74. Real early ones, this bushing that came out with the pulley, real early models, this would have been brass. But it's just a bushing for it to ride on, so go ahead and slip that back in. There's an index right here, a little square index. You got to make sure you line that up so that it sits flat. That's what you want. So you can unwind your old rope. And this was starting to fray. And again, it's swollen so it doesn't fit inside the pulley properly. Alright, so you can see, maybe you can, maybe you can't. Let's see if I can get a little light on this. There we go. See the end of the rope down in there. This is again important because you want to route this thing properly. You can take your needle nose pliers, get down in there. Again, being a swollen rope, it's going to be tight coming out, but once you get a hold of it, out she comes. And this is about the right length. I keep bulk starter rope on hand because I do enough of these things. I think the spec called for, I believe it's 38 inches, because this is not a very big starter drum. I'm going to give a little extra than what was here, just on principle. Now these ropes are nylon based, and you can see where I cut this kind of frayed. Excuse me. The best way to deal with that, get your lighter or a match out, not near gasoline of course, heat the end, and when you just start to see some puddling where it's gotten good and hot and it sizzles, let it cool for just a second, and then, you know, is this the OSHA approved way of doing it? No, probably not, but you can get it hot, set it on your bench and roll it. Something to get a nice point that's sealed and isn't going to fray as you start fishing this thing through. And my standard practice is when I cut it on the spool, I go ahead and do that cut end. I'm going to do that real quick here. Anyway, next time I'm halfway there. Alright, so this is the, I was wrong before, this is the hardest part. You can see that the hole goes all the way through, and you've got to get the rope inside of the slot and get it to go up through. Now, there's no way I'm going to be able to show this on camera, but the hole is right down here at the base of the rope drum, and you've just got to get the thing to go through. And the tighter you make that point on the rope, the better off you are, because it'll slip through quicker and easier. I'm using my small flat blade without a whole hell of a lot of success here at the moment. Some of the later pulleys had a cutout that made this a little easier. Sometimes that makes it worth it to switch over to a new pulley, but this one's in excellent shape. It's not all corroded up and destroyed the way some of them are that come through here. Okay, you may have to dig into your set of tools and get out your dental picks in order to push this through. This is a persnickety one this morning. Figures the one that I would pick to do a video on would be a pain in the neck. But once you start seeing it to push through, if you can get your pick into it and just pull it through. And yes, that's easier said than done. Okay, well, I'm going to stop this and get this thing fished through because I don't want 5 minutes of me sitting here doing nothing. Okay, after a little cussing, screaming, and other stuff, persuasion, got this rope fished, mostly. I ended up having to cut it at a bit of an angle to get it to go through the initial hole, but you can see it's just pushing through right here. So as you push it into where you're going to end up tying your knot, once it is visible, which I don't know that it is in the video, but it is to my eyeball here, pull it partially through. Now, I like to do a double knot down in here, especially on this style, because it is such a pain in the ass. You don't want to have to do it again. And there's room for it to be contained inside this starter housing without any trouble at all. pull it good and tight. You do not want that coming undone. It'll slip up in there. And we're good. So remember, these engines turn counterclockwise as you're cranking. So you want to wind your rope clockwise. And you always want your rope to end going up towards your starter eyelet. That way, as you're unwinding, it's going to roll it counterclockwise. So you got to fish this through, which this will be another one. This eyelet's not worn too badly, so it may be a slight pain in the neck here, like everything else has been on this saw. It's kind of funny. I talk to people and they say, "Oh, super easy, a great saw, really like them," and they do have a ton of power for the size that they are. And they're very compact, which Homelite did that by design. One side effect of that is they are a giant pain in the butt to work on. And people, they get confused when I say that. Well, thought they were a good saw. Well, they are a good saw. There's no question about that. But there's no space to speak of to spare on these things. So everything you do is in pretty tight, compact quarters, and it can be a little bit frustrating. Alright, so there's the cutouts in the side of the pulley here that kind of help you get the rope to go where it needs to go. Now, this isn't indexed yet. See how it's kind of wobbling around. You got to get it to go past the pawls, and you'll hear it snap in just like it did right there. Now, I'm not going to complete this all the way because I still got to address that spring issue, and this video is going to be too long as it is. But normally at this point, you'd fish your rope up through your starter grip. Remember to get this order right because it's irritating if you don't. Through the grip, then through your insert. You tie your knot off. I like to use a double knot when I can, but you want to make sure everything fits into this so that when it snaps back down in, you don't have a big old bulge or a piece hanging out. That's not what you want. Once that's tied on, and again, I'm not going to because I've got some other work, but I just tied this knot, you slip your cover back on. Now again, this starter spring lock has a square shape in the pulley, so you want to get it indexed, and you're going to have to twist it a few times to do that. Again, since nothing else has been easy, there we go. This won't be either. Now the way you properly tension this is by twisting this spring clockwise to put tension on it. You see how that just slipped down? Pretty loose. If you had your grip tight on here, it'd still be dangling over. So give it another turn and see where you're at. Now that would be okay. If you had to go, if your starter grip is flopped in any way, you pull it out, it doesn't retract quite right, give it one more turn. You don't want to load this up too badly, but at the same time, you want it to be right, and you want your logo to be facing the right direction. So if it's a difference between half a turn or a turn and a half to get your right tension, go to the turn and a half. Once you got it, just hold it in place. You put these screws in, tighten them down. Again, I'm not going to go all the way since I've got some work still to do, but there you go. Now one mistake people make is they'll try and pull these things over. This has got a lot of compression. Without using that compression release that these have, that's a good way to break the rope. See this with the compression release on, almost. Even, yeah, God, that's got a lot of compression. But that's with the compression release on. So With it off, you could see how it'd be very easy to break that rope. And that is actuated, in case, make sure that's still in the field of vision, and it's not, by using your fast idle. Pull your trigger, push that pin in, let up on the trigger, let up on the pin. It lifts the little pin right here on the cylinder head, releases the compression enough to start it without breaking a bunch of stuff. Then when you pull the trigger, away you go. So anyway, in a nutshell, that is the starter rope replacement on a Super Easy.